he says God would not choose an innocent to replace another innocent, which is why Allah took Jesus to heaven, then took an innocent man in a house, put Jesus' face on that man, had the Muslim mob grab that man, murder that man who was innocent, because Allah does that. You want to explain that, Syed? Why Allah would choose an innocent man and have him murdered by a Muslim mob? Yeah. So, and also I will today explain exactly why Muslims, I have tried for months now to get Muslims to quote me the Sharia. Now I will mention the text, I'll give them the page, I'll give them these are the books, these are the authors. They won't, and I'll explain exactly why they won't do that. Because they're not allowed. The Sharia expressly forbids Muslims from revealing the Sharia to non-Muslims. They're not allowed to give it to us. So even though I can literally have it on the screen, I can talk from it, I can quote it, they will actually deny it. They will literally deny it. In fact, I'm talking to someone right now on YouTube who is denying it and claims that I'm an American Muslim. I don't follow the Sharia. Right, whatever. Different sect, I guess. Well, look, the less Islam there is, the less Islam you follow, the better, man. So anyhow,
yeah, I think that's one thing we can all agree on, is that you shouldn't be following the Sharia.
I happen to agree with that. Who told you Allah would leave an innocent to be oppressed? Well, they put him on the cross and they murdered him, Syed. You know, Jesus was taken up to heaven, and then an innocent man, his face was changed to that of Jesus, and then he was murdered, beaten, whipped, spat on, as you always tell us, left bleeding and beaten and put on the cross to die. So yeah, Allah did that to an innocent man, because we know what Allah is, you know. Yeah, shall I start then?
Yep, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Yeah, no, I mean, Didat is just it's really pathetic. Why does he have to lie? We read his books. We've read hundreds of pages of their Sharia and their fiqh manuals, you know, the jurisprudence and the Sharia manuals. The fiqh interprets the Sharia. The Sharia is interpreted from the Quran and the Sunnah, which determines the laws of Allah, the actual sacred law of Allah. And then, of course, the fiqh is the exegesis of that. It is how that is expounded, and all these specific scenarios are created. In fact, the Sharia and the fiqh are the Talmud of Islam. They are exactly the carbon copy of the Talmud, right? And of the Gemara and so on. So yeah.
I just did want to make one comment before you get started with the presentation. I did want to point out that in the thread, I invited D-Dot to join us live in case he wanted to defend himself. Of course, it was short notice, so I don't want to say for sure that he's dodging us, but he has been invited many times to join us live, and he never shows up live.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be noted that the law of Moses is 613 laws, whereas if you read the Sharia, there were thousands of Sharia manuals at one time. And those were also very, very like shorthand. But now what's happened is the four schools of jurisprudence have essentially settled on a handful of scholars and a handful of manuals, although there are scholars that aren't very well known that are specialists in a given area, and they constantly quote these scholars. So the major ones are not the only scholars. But let me, so let me share my screen. I will bring up, let me get that going. And I will choose screen 1 or screen 2. I don't know. And here we go. Has that popped up? Okay, so I only have 8 slides, and then I'll shift to some PDFs. And everyone can see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the slide I called Sharia, right? So there's a section within the Umdat al-Salik, which, as I've said before, is the world's most famous Sharia manual. And this is section R7.0, giving directions to someone who wants to do wrong, right? And it says here, it is not permissible to give directions. Let me just get the laser pointer. It is not permissible to give directions and the like to someone intending to perpetrate a sin, because it is helping another to commit disobedience. Right? The Quran says, do not assist one another in sin and aggression. So in this section, R8.0, holding one's tongue, it says here, giving directions to wrongdoers, right, includes showing the way to policemen when they are going to commit injustice and corruption, which is why after the murders in 2015, for instance, in the Bataclan in France, that's why for more than a month, Muslims hid the criminals in Belgium, knowing they were there, but for them to tell the police where these guys were hiding, that would be giving directions to wrongdoers. So, yeah. And then look at number 2, what's important here. It is forbidden for a Muslim to teach questions of sacred law to those learning it in bad faith, i.e., who do not want the knowledge to apply it in their lives, but for some unworthy purpose. So for this reason, Muslims are not allowed to reveal any of the Sharia to the kafir. To your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Yeah, you'd think that if this was, good material that everyone should believe in, that you'd be encouraged to reveal it. Yet somehow this is secret information that you'll damage Islam if you tell anyone about it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so this falls under a larger section called talebearing or namima, right? And talebearing, telling stories, is unlawful. It's against the law in Islam, which means that it's a crime and there will be punishment. Talebearing is not limited to just telling stories, but consists of revealing anything whose disclosure is resented. Now, I've noticed that when I start quoting the Sharia, it upsets, it enrages Muslims. It makes them angry. They will start swearing. And if you read Islam Critiques channel, there's at least 3 who've started swearing at me. He banned one of them, I think, and there's another who started using some really foul language with me. Now, I know I annoy people. I got in my way a little bit, but I don't swear at people. So, and the reality of talebearing lies in divulging a secret, in revealing something confidential whose disclosure is resented. As we can see here, the Sharia is confidential. The Muslim is not allowed to reveal confidential secrets about Islam. So a person should not speak of anything he notices about people besides that which benefits a Muslim or prevents disobedience, which is against, and we discussed in the previous show that Muslims must go so far as to literally kill people with weapons if they are being disobedient. Talebearers are corrupt and their information is unacceptable. That's why people like Syed can only waffle on with complete garbage, because they can't actually quote their own sources to us. I mean, it's really sad. If this stuff was so good, they should be able to talk to us about it. They want Sharia to be imposed on the whole world. They want everybody on earth to follow the Sharia. If it's so amazing, why can't they just tell us about it? Why can't they just say, well, on this book, on this page, read this. This is amazing. Here it is. I'm quoting it. No, they can't. It's a secret. It's a dirty, dirty little secret, Syed. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is just crazy. We don't have anything remotely like this in Christianity. I can't imagine a Christian leader being like, guys, this is secret information. Don't tell any non-Christians about it. We don't want them to know this stuff. If they know this stuff, they'll get the quote unquote wrong impression about what we teach.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, okay, I've got 8 slides to get through here. So today we're going to talk about jihad. I'm going to introduce more of jihad. And I guess this might end up being like another show next week or something. But let's see how far we get here. So jihad is a legal term. Yes, it has a colloquial meaning. Yes, you can find it in the dictionary. It also has a meaning you will not find in the dictionary. So if we look at this is from the Reliance of the Traveler again. If we look at jihad, let's look at the Sharia definition, as they call it. So this chapter within this book, The Reliance of the Traveler, is a summary, right? It is 1,200 pages long. It summarizes all of the very best of the fiqh, of the Sharia and of the jurisprudence related to the Sharia, the fiqh related to that, in this book. So it's a summary of all the best of Islamic law, sacred law as they call it. It gives us the meaning of jihad in section 090, the scriptural basis, that's from the Sharia, sorry, that's from the Quran, the obligatory character of jihad, and that it is a communal obligation, and to surrender when overrun. Now think about it. If jihad is about improving yourself, walking little old ladies across the street, what does that have to do with surrender when overrun? I gotta ask myself, like, good grief. Please, Muslims, stop lying to us. We read your books. We've read them. I've read them. I've read thousands of pages of your books. Please, we know this stuff. Stop lying to us. You're only lying to yourselves. The only one you're lying to is yourself. So who is obliged to fight in jihad? Oh my gosh, more helping little old ladies across the street. Those who are not permitted to fight, the objectives of jihad, and regarding Jews, Christians, and Zoroastrians. And then the rules of warfare. Oh my God, jihad is the rules of warfare and those whom it is unlawful to kill in jihad. So you can see there's some fascinating things here. And of course, don't forget about women and children captives, always very important in Islam. Let's have a look at the definition of 090 jihad. Jihad means to war against non-Muslims. That is the Sharia. Jihad means to make war against non-Muslims. It is etymologically derived from the word mujahada, signifying warfare to establish the religion. Now, last week we had a discussion and I blacked this section out and I'm going to include it. Notice, now this is not in the original Arabic. The stuff here in gray is not in the original Arabic. The translator put this in himself. And it is the lesser jihad. As for the greater jihad, it is spiritual warfare against the lower self, the nafs, which is why the Prophet said as he was returning from jihad, from murdering people in other words, we have returned from the lesser jihad to the greater jihad. Now what is interesting about this, that this is a weak hadith. The Sharia is quoting a weak hadith. In fact, the Sharia quotes many weak hadith. And what's interesting is whenever we quote a weak hadith, what do Muslims tell us that is?
They tell us that we're liars and deceivers for doing that.
Yeah, that weak hadith are effectively false, they're meaningless, they're irrelevant. Well, why is the author here quoting a weak hadith? Now, I would love to hear an outcry from the Muslims telling us that, oh my gosh, this man is lying. Please go ahead, just drop it in the comments below, right? And remember to write to the editor and to the author and send him an email, right? So let's have a look, lesser jihad. Let's have a look at lesser jihad. Let's see what the scholars of Islam, the top scholars of Islam have to say. So in all 6 major hadith collections, that's Bukhari, Muslim, Dawood, Al-Sugra, Tirmidhi, and Ibn Majah, jihad almost always refers to the lesser or the outward physical struggle and not the greater, quote unquote, inward spiritual struggle. As an example, there are nearly 200 references to jihad in the most trusted collections of hadith. Sahih Bukhari alone, only in Sahih Bukhari. And every single one says that jihad means literal warfare. Every single one. So this fabricated hadith does not appear in any of the famous hadith collections and is inconsistent with the teachings found in corroborated Sahih hadith. So this little hadith here, it is the lesser jihad. So this is a hadith which is actually fabricated. Most consider this fabricated. Some of these hadiths state that fighting jihad is second only to the belief in Muhammad and Allah, and that standing for an hour in the ranks of battle is better than standing in prayer for 60 years. That's based on Sahih hadith. Furthermore, Muhammad himself refutes the claim that the greater jihad is the inward spiritual struggle when he states the best jihad is that of a man whose blood is shed and his horse is wounded. So Syed, can you hear there? Muhammad is, your Sharia authors are lying to us, and we've just caught them lying because Muhammad says that this man is lying. And in fact, he said Muhammad was lying. So yeah, it was narrated that Amr bin Abbas said, I came to the Prophet and said, O Messenger of Allah, which jihad is best? And he said, that of a man whose blood is shed and his horse is wounded. That's from walking little old ladies across the street. People die a lot from that. So Sunan Ibn Majah 2794, it was asked, O Messenger of Allah, which of mankind is most excellent? And he replied, a believer who strives in the path of Allah with his self and his wealth. Sahih Bukhari. Allah's apostle was asked, what is the best deed? He replied, to believe in Allah and his apostle. And the questioner then asked, what is the next in goodness? He replied, to participate in jihad, religious fighting in Allah's cause. Sahih Bukhari. Standing for an hour in the ranks of battle is better than standing in prayer for 60 years. That's Sahih. And that is the Sahih al-Jami' Sagir, number 4305. So, it's interesting that Syed doesn't want to engage with this, but he can't. He really can't. I mean, Islam is enforced stupidity and insanity. Sahih Bukhari again, a morning or evening spent in the path of Allah is better than the world and all that it contains. Shall I tell you what has the best degree among people? A man who takes the rein of his horse to do jihad in the way of Allah. That's Muwatta Malik. Right? Sahih Muslim tells us again, there's another act which elevates a man in paradise to a grade 100 times higher. Jihad in the way of Allah. Jihad in the way of Allah. And then Sahih al-Jami, on the authority of Rashi, on the authority of Sa'd, on the authority of one of the companions, a man said, why is it that the believer are all put to trial in their graves except for the martyrs? And he said the clashing of swords above his head was sufficient trial for him. And on it goes, on it goes. So jihad, so, right, death of a hypocrite, whoever dies but neither fought in Allah's cause nor sincerely considered fighting will die a death of jahiliyyah. That's you, Side. Why aren't you busy fighting? Which is the pre-Islamic era of ignorance. That's Sahih Hadith Tafsir Ibn Kathir. So understand that this is all about fighting. This is entirely, and this lesser hadith is a lie. So when you read the Islamic text, you've got to understand that there are falsehoods deliberately written into these. And they're not only deceiving Christians or non-Muslims, but they're deceiving Muslims like Syed here. So and last one, sorry, I forgot. And Ibn Taymiyyah, also known as Shaykhul Islam, there's a hadith related to a group of people which states that the Prophet, peace be upon him, hold on, give me 1 second, guys, please. Okay. Sorry. We have returned from jihad, right? Asgard, lesser jihad, to jihad akbar, greater jihad. I left the fridge open. Oops. The lady of the house is not happy. This hadith has no source. Nobody whomsoever in the field of Islamic knowledge has narrated it, right? This is Ibn Taymiyyah, right? Ibn Shaykh ul-Islam. Shaykh ul-Islam is one of the 24 greatest scholars of Islam in history. There are only 24 of them. If you look on Wikipedia, you'll find a list of 24 of them. So these are he's one of the greatest scholars of Islam to ever live, and their statements, their fatwa, became binding as part of the jurisprudence and as part of the Sharia. So this hadith has no source. Nobody in the field of Islamic knowledge has narrated it. Jihad against the disbelievers is the most noble of actions, and moreover, it is the most important action for the sake of mankind. And this is significant that I'm bringing up Ibn Taymiyyah last.
Before you go on, I just want to re-emphasize that this translator of the Sharia law here apparently thinks he knows better than all these Islamic scholars before him about what is good jihad and what is weak jihad.
Yeah.
That if we got all these quotes from Muhammad saying that, in the West, sometimes we're told that jihad means struggle, which I mean is technically literally correct. But you could struggle against yourself, i.e. praying. That if we got all these quotes from Muhammad saying that, in the West, sometimes we're told that jihad means struggle, which I mean technically literally correct. But you could struggle against praying. You there?
I've just got, the audio disappeared there for a while.
Yeah, I was just saying that our English translator apparently thinks that he can redefine Islam to be whatever he wants it to be, much like Saeed and many other Muslims we meet on YouTube who either actually believe or are pretending to believe that Islam is quite different than what the scholars of Islam teach.
Correct. Yeah, and also Syed disappeared because he said, he's not getting any traction, but also he doesn't want to learn his own Islam. So the scriptural basis for jihad prior to scholarly consensus is Quranic verses. Fighting is prescribed for you, Quran 2:216. Now notice, we are always told that we are quoting things without context. We are taking fragments. Notice the Sharia itself quotes only a few words out of the entire verse, just a couple of words. And it says that these words, just these 5 words here, are sufficient to get the entire meaning accurately. That means literally what it says. Slay them wherever you find them, Quran 4:89. Fight the idolaters utterly, Quran 9:36. So the Sharia itself only needs a few words to make sense of what it means, which is literal meaning. And such hadiths as the one related by Bukhari and Muslim have been commanded to fight people until they testify that there's no God but Allah and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. If they say it, they've saved their blood and their possessions from me. So, and the hadith reported by Muslim, to go forth in the morning or evening to fight in the path of Allah is better than the whole world and everything in it. These hadith then are reported by the most famous Sharia manual in the world to be entirely accurate and authentic.
So we got a single weak hadith against, well, more than weak really, because it doesn't have any chain of narration whatsoever.
Yeah, they say it's actually fabricated. It's louder.
Yeah, so inauthentic, made up hadith against dozens of Sahih hadith. I think it's pretty clear what Islam teaches here.
So details concerning jihad are found in the accounts of the military expeditions of the Prophet, including his own martial forays and those on which he dispatched others. This is Sunnah. So further from the reliance of the travelers, jihad is obligatory. It is a communal obligation. When enough people perform jihad to successfully accomplish it, it is no longer obligatory upon others. This is the reason for the small minority who are always fighting in jihad, right? And the evidence for which is the Prophet saying, he who provides the equipment for a soldier in jihad has himself performed jihad. So they don't have to fight. They could say, well, that's not me. I'm not like that. But sure, they're paying money. They're providing some kind of help somewhere. It's obligatory upon them to all provide help. And it says, and Allah, the Most High, said, those of the believers who are unhurt, that do not suffer injuries, but sit at home, are not equal to those who fight in Allah's path with their property and with their lives. Allah prefers those who fight with their property and their lives a whole degree above those who sit behind. That's Quran 4:95. Now, if none of those concerned perform jihad, and it does not happen at all, then everyone who is aware that it is obligatory is guilty of sin. Jihad was a communal obligation in the time of the Prophet. And there are 2 possible states in respect to non-Muslims. The first is when they are in their own countries, in which case jihad is a communal obligation. And this is what our author is speaking about when he says jihad is a communal obligation, meaning upon the Muslims each year. So they are meant to launch warfare upon their neighbors to expand Islam at least once a year. Jihad is also personally obligatory for everyone able to perform it, male or female. And who is obliged to fight in jihad? 09.4, those called upon to perform jihad when it is a communal obligation are every able-bodied man who has reached puberty and is sane. This disqualifies Saeed, obviously.
That's pretty good. So
yeah.
Constantine says zakat and halal seals pays for jihad, which is very true.
Yeah, 15% of zakat goes towards jihad. 1/8. Well, 1/8. And notice it says in 09.6, it is offensive to conduct a military expedition against a hostile non-Muslim without the caliph's permission, which they'll tell you happily. Although if there's no caliph, no permission is required. So no caliph, no problem, kill him.
I think this is a good time to bring up what there was some discussion about in the chat earlier. Apparently, they just caught some wannabe jihadi terrorists in Germany who are going to try to kill a German YouTuber for criticizing Islam. And of course, there's no caliph in Germany. So they were just doing exactly what they were commanded to do here, start the fight for Islam on their own, since there's no one to lead them.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, precisely. So
Before you go on, I think that this is a good time to remind everyone that, there's a number of us doing this on YouTube. I'm not too concerned about a terrorist trying to attack me. I mean, they would go for someone more prominent first, but we do put in a huge amount of time into this. We hope that you find it valuable. If you're able to support us financially, that would be great. But what we really want you to do is spread the information around.
yeah, please use the information, spread it, speak about it, bring it up online, talk to people. But also use super chats, please, in the chat. For those of you who want to support Thaddeus, use the super chat feature. His channel is monetized. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of time and effort that goes into this. You'd be amazed how many hours go into this, and in the background, it's a huge amount of effort and work and research and reading. I mean, when you read a 360-page book, it takes a few hours. So yeah, let's continue. So I've only got 2 more slides on this, then I'll skip over to something else. So the objectives of jihad, 09.8. The Caliph makes war upon Jews, Christians, and Zoroastrians. Now, there are only 400,000 Zoroastrians left today in the world of what used to be tens of millions. Provided he has first invited them to enter Islam in faith and practice, and if they will not, then invited them to enter the social order of Islam by paying the jizya. Although, you'll notice we've already discussed before, if they don't do that, well, it doesn't matter, right? And of course, which is the significance of their paying it, right? Which is to get you to pay, well, to enter Islam, to be forced to enter Islam. And then notice it says the war continues until they become Muslim or else pay the jizya in accordance with the word of Allah, the Most High. It makes no bones. Fight them until they become Muslim or they pay.
Yep, exactly what we looked at in the opening little exchange between myself and inspired by Sheikh Ahmed D. That there is a perpetual state of war until non-Muslims either convert or they feel themselves subjugated, in the exact words of the Quran, by paying the jizya.
Yeah. So then fight those who do not believe in Allah until they pay the poll tax out of hand. So in accordance with the word of Allah, the Most High, and this is the word of Allah, fight those who do not believe in Allah until they pay the poll tax out of hand and are humbled. Quran 9:29. And it says, and notice it says here, nothing but Islam will be accepted from them, for taking the poll tax is only effective until Jesus's descent, which the divinely revealed law of, which is the divinely revealed law of Muhammad, the coming of Jesus, right? Jesus will rule by the law of Muhammad, right? And this does not contradict the final coming of Jesus, since Jesus will not rule according to the gospel, but as a follower of Muhammad. And 9:9, the Caliph fights all other people until they become Muslim. It's pretty blunt. It's pretty blunt. Now, I started throwing this at a guy on in Islam Critiqued. I started talking about the Sharia, and now he's denying the Sharia. I don't follow that. That's not important. That's nonsense. That's rubbish. It's the same thing to say about the Quran when you know the Quran too well. It's the same thing to say about the Hadith or anything else. And now they'll simply flat out deny the Sharia. It's that simple. Now notice jihad is preferred to peace, and we'll see multiple repetitions of this. Truces are permissible, but not obligatory. And also, this is because it is a matter of the gravest consequence, because truces entail the non-performance of jihad. So if the Muslims are weak, a truce may be made for 10 years if necessary, which can be broken and that have been broken, right? It is not permissible to stipulate longer than that, save by means of new truces, each of which does not exceed 10 years. There must be some interest served in making a truce other than the preservation of the status quo. Allah says, do not be faint-hearted and call for peace when it is you who are the uppermost. If you have the strength, attack. That's what they're saying. So now I'll skip over to the next, and we're going to look at the Hadayah, Volume 2, and a book by Ibn Taymiyyah. Any comments or thoughts so far?
No, I think you got it covered pretty good. This is just so direct opposite of everything. Is just so direct opposite of what Christianity teaches, and Islam, you're weak unless you perform jihad, as in literally fighting in a battle. If you perform it in a lesser way, like giving financial support, that's allowed, but you're still the weaker, less preferred people. Whereas in Christianity, Jesus says whoever would be first will be last, and whoever is the least among you will be first, i.e., the kind of things that society and Islam values is what Christianity views as being the worldly things, the things that are evil.
Yeah, I mean, yes, Saint Eliora is saying denying the Sharia. So yeah, it's Abdulism at work. It is. Look, they cannot give us the satisfaction of being better, knowing better. Look, I tease them constantly. I say, look, you don't seem exactly like the best of people, right? You out of, you can't spell, you're poorly educated. I mean, I rag on them constantly, and it drives them up the wall. But yeah, they will deny anything and everything. They have to. They have to. So this is the Hadaya. This is the most famous Hanafi school of fiqh manual, the most popular one. And what I like is I prefer, these are all now, I've been looking, this one was translated in 1791, if I recall. And I've read a lot of it. This is 2,652 pages, if I remember. So think, the Quran is 150,000 words, half of, at least 80% of the thing is abrogated. So the Quran is like 12 pages long, like I've said. This is 4 volumes of over 2,650 pages of intimate detail discussing the Sharia and the fiqh that they have expounded upon the Sharia with. So this is book 9. This is volume 2, the Institutes, right? And they discuss here in chapter 2 of book 9 of the manner of waging war and of making peace, and concerning the persons to whom it is lawful to grant protection, those are dhimmis, and of plunder and the division thereof, and of the conquest of infidels. Religion of peace, conquest of infidels. That's great. And they speak of tithe and tribute. Now, each of these sections is roughly 50 to 70 pages long, so there is a lot of detail here. Now, my plan is not to discuss every last page. I'm going to be skipping through somewhat. But notice, okay, when the call to war is answered by any single tribe or party of Muslims making war, the obligation is no longer binding upon the rest of the Muslims. If, however, no Muslims were to make war, the whole of the Muslims would incur the criminality of neglecting jihad. This is exactly what the other Sharia manual said. Worded slightly differently, but it is exactly the same information. It says the same. So clearly, these are coming from the same source. They say the very same thing in 2 different schools of fiqh. The first one was Shafi, although it quotes other schools, and this one is Hanafi. Now notice it says here, the destruction of the sword is incurred by infidels, although they not be the first aggressors. Right? And Muslims will lie to you and constantly tell you, no, we only fight defensive war only if we're attacked. Well, it says here, the destruction of the sword, and notice, this is Arabic, it means qital, right? They spell it a little differently here, but they always tell you, no, jihad is different to qital. Qital's different. You're talking about qital, and we're talking about personal spiritual struggle, which is jihad. The proper technical scientific term for that is crap, right? Because qital, meaning war in its operation, such as fighting, slaying, etc. Okay, meaning war in its operation, such as fighting, slaying, etc. So the destruction of the sword is incurred by infidels. We have earned it, deserved it, although they be not the first aggressors, as appears from various passages in the sacred writings, which are generally received to this effect. And it says here, infidels, that's you, may be attacked without provocation. Comments, questions from anyone? Right. So on the manner of waging war, chapter 2. When the Muslims enter the enemy's country and they besiege the cities or strongholds of the infidels, it is necessary to invite them to embrace the faith, because Ibn Abbas relates of the Prophet, he never destroyed any without previously inviting them to embrace the faith. If they embrace the faith, it is unnecessary to war with them, because that which was the design of the war is then obtained without war. And what is the design of the war? To make you submit to Islam. or to become a dhimmi and pay them money. So if you do that, one of those two things, then what they wanted to do was obtained without them making war with you. The Prophet, moreover, has said, we are directed to make war upon men until such time as they shall confess that there is no God but Allah. But when they repeat this creed, their persons and properties are in protection. If they do not accept the call, they must be called upon to pay the jizya or the capitation tax. And by submitting to this tax, war is terminated. And this is upon the authority of the Quran. So infidels must first be called to embrace the faith, and if they refuse the faith, to pay the tribute. So I think this is a very consistent message. We've seen this over and over. And of course, infidels must be called to the faith, okay, previous to making war upon them. So this is clearly not defensive, this is offensive. So the Prophet instructed his commanders to call the infidels to the faith because the people will perceive that they are attacked for the sake of religion. The people will perceive that they are attacked for the sake of religion and not for the sake of taking their property.
I rather doubt that the people being attacked are going to be like, oh, they're just trying to be religious. They're not after our stuff at all.
Yeah, but they need to know apparently that they're being attacked for the sake of religion. So they're doing it for the sake of Islam, for the religion. And, you know, it says you're all making slaves of their children. And this consideration, it is possible that they may be induced to agree to the call to Islam in order to save themselves from the trouble of war. So threats. Now remember, the last show we did on Tuesday, I discussed that you're supposed to make threats on an individual level to people who don't listen. Now this is at the level of warfare with armies. The same thing. Threaten them, then attack. So if a Muslim attacks infidels without, now notice they said you should be called to the faith first, right? But if a Muslim attacks the infidels without calling them to the faith, he is an offender because this is forbidden. But, and here is the big but yet if he does attack them before inviting them and he slays them, he kills them, and he takes their property, there is no fine because that which protects them, namely Islam, does not exist in them. So there is no penalty, there is no punishment. And in the same manner as the slaying of the women or the infant children of infidels is forbidden, but if a person were to slay the women or infant children, he is not liable to a fine. So they always famously tell us, well, Islam, you know, they have these moral rules of war and you shouldn't be killing women and children. Well, it says here, well, if you do, well, okay, well, whatever. So yeah, it's a pity that Ahmed Deedat hasn't come to chat with us. And of course, Sai decided to leave because he would have been humiliated here.
Well, don't worry. I'm sure Inspired will be in the comments later. He'll find some random word somewhere in the video to object to and ignore the rest of the content.
Yeah, exactly. So notice the Prophet plundered and despoiled the tribe of whoever that is by surprise. Now notice it says here, he plundered and despoiled the tribe by surprise. He didn't warn them. He just attacked them out of the blue. That is not defensive. That is predatory. Okay, so notice to make a predatory attack at an early hour, and then he set their village on fire. Such attacks are not preceded by a call. So much for telling people, hey, come to Islam and you'll be fine. Well, or maybe we'll just attack you in the middle of the night and murder you and set fire to your house and kill you. Yeah, this is this is what Muhammad did. So yeah, this is jihad. So if the infidels, upon receiving the call, neither consent nor agree to pay tax, call upon Allah for assistance and make war upon them. Because Allah is the assistant of those who serve him, and he is the destroyer of his enemies, the infidels. Here we're told in the Sharia that you are the enemy of Allah and you must be destroyed. You know, this is how it is. So attack the infidels with all manner of warlike engines, and all of this is sanctified by the law. So I can stop here and I can move to Ibn Taymiyyah's book. I don't want to do too much of this, but this book also tells us, and we've spoken about this before, that if you are at peace This must only be done if it benefits the Muslims in some way, if it moves their aims forward, if it strengthens them or weakens you, because peace means that they're neglecting the obligation of fighting against the non-Muslims. Your thoughts?
Yeah, agreed, definitely. Constance has a insightful summary, I would say, and that is that the invitation to Islam is itself a declaration of war or aggression.
Well, in fact, the statement, to you be your religion, to me be mine, that is actually a threat. That is actually a threat from a Muslim. To you be your religion, to me be mine. It is not accommodation, it is a threat. Because you've made your choice, you've made your bed, now lie in it. That is the actual context of that verse. You want to be naughty? Well, I'm going to have to spank you. That is exactly what that means. Like, okay, child, you want to be naughty? Then you're going to get beaten. That is a threat. If you read the scholarly works, they define that very clearly. They're telling you, okay, we're coming for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I liked that the author that you're quoting right now was very explicit. He's like, well, you know, by threatening violence, some people might convert to Islam, so it's all good.
Yeah, I mean, so they say they don't, no, we don't need means like, like Dito saying, we don't need those means. We don't have to lie. Yeah, sure, yeah. You just threaten to burn their village and murder them and enslave their children to yeah, sure. So
Well, it's
war's
not a
not observant.
lie if it's a legitimate threat.
I guess so. No, war is an observance of a divine ordinance. And atonement is not due for anything which may happen in the fulfillment of divine ordinance, right? Otherwise, men would neglect the fulfillment of the ordinance because they're scared of becoming liable to atonement. I mean, think about it. So you can do literally anything. So here they get this is the get out of jail free card. This is how they can get around anything they say. Well, I mean, Allah wants you to murder people, and if you don't, then it's a sin. So if you have to kill women and children, go for it. It's okay. There's no sin. And that is exactly what they tell. So I'll pause here. We've covered this before, and I can always do this again in the future. But let's go talk about Ibn Taymiyyah and this book. What is the time now? The Religious and Moral Doctrine of Jihad. And I will try and get through this. I'll do just segments of this. Okay. So this is the governance according to Allah's flock, to Allah's law. So now we've looked a little bit at the Sharia, and I've covered it in past shows. Now we're going to see this is Ibn Taymiyyah wrote the book, literally wrote the book on warfare in Islam. The book is called The Religious and Moral Doctrine of Jihad by Sheikh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. Like I said, one of the 24 most revered scholars within Islam. Short bio of this guy. He completed his studies when he was a teenager. At the age of 19, he became a teacher of Islamic doctrine. He was well versed in Quranic studies, in Hadith. He was actually he was actually a guy who memorized 100,000 Hadith. They have a name for that, a Hafiz, not a Hafiz. Anyway, something like a Hafiz, someone who remembers the Quran, but he remembered 100,000 Hadith. So he's considered one of the finest Hadith scholars in the world, and in history, in fact. Fiqh, theology, Arabic grammar, and scholastic theology. He started giving fatwa on religious legal matters at the age of 19. So he knew what he was talking about. So he held the protection of Islam should be the primary objective of all Muslims and the condition to complete their faith. Now, when they say protection of Islam, they don't necessarily mean, they mean going out there to make war on people. So let's have a look. He calls that these murtaduns are worse than the original kafir. Fighting them is obligatory if they do not return to Islam. That's what you do to apostates. And their prisoners are not to be released. Their food is not to be eaten. The Muslim man cannot marry their women, and they are all to be fought and to be killed. This is the religion of peace. Now, everything he says here in this book is consistent with the Sharia, right? This group, under the consensus opinion of Muslims, must be fought, right? And none of the companions or their successors disagree about the necessity of religion will all be for Allah alone. Now, this is what they do with people who accepted Islam and then leave Islam, with apostate, right? This is the actual about. Now, he says here, there will always remain a group of people from my nation fighting upon the truth, subjugating their enemies, and that is you. That is why there will always be a small that small minority, as they call it, the small minority that is constantly out there fighting, performing jihad, because this is said by the Prophet Muhammad. All right, and there are different hadith and ayat showing the importance of jihad and inevitable victory of the Muslims. Right, so there is the victorious group, the Mujahideen warriors. So therefore, those who fight in jihad are superior, are held to be the superior Muslims. And he proved that there is nothing higher in status than jihad, and no rank can rise above the level of Mujahideen and the martyrs in the path of Allah. So much for that weak hadith. So we have Ibn Taymiyyah stating that yeah, jihad is the highest devotion in Islam, right? Any comments or thoughts so far? So,
you know, I mean, he's only one of the 24 best Islamic scholars in history. I mean,
yeah,
surely he can't compete with YouTube commenters about his
no, you
knowledge.
can't. But also he's specialized. So remember, all of these scholars specialized in different fields. His specialty is jihad. This is his specialty. He was the guy that specialized here. So this book is a translation of a section from the chapter entitled Jihad al-Kufar al-Qital al-Fasil. What's interesting, we have jihad and qital next to each other in one sentence. And this means jihad against the disbelievers, the decisive fight. If Didat comes on, I'd love him to explain what the context is here and how we are reading it wrong. So the penalties that the Sharia has introduced for those who disobey Allah and his messenger are of two kinds. The punishment of those who are under the sway of the Imam, that is both individuals and collectives, as has been mentioned before in the chapter on criminal law. So a Muslim who does not obey the Sharia, an apostate in other words, he's under the sway of the Imam, and their disobedience falls under a criminal act, right? So because when you swear to, well, when you become a Muslim, when you go blah, 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 spin around 3 times and they pat you on the head and you become a Muslim, what happens is when you say the words, there is no God but Muhammad and Allah is his puppet. When you say that 3 times, there is no God but Muhammad and Allah is his puppet, then you become a Muslim. But that is called bay'ah. It is a contract. It is a verbal contract that you make with Allah. And if you break the contract, the penalty is death because you have signed a contract. Remember, Islam is a religion of law. It's also a religion of war. So the punishment of recalcitrant groups, such as those that can only be brought under the sway of the Imam by a decisive fight, that is you. That is you, who is a Christian, a Jew, someone who's not a Muslim. That then is the jihad against the unbelievers, the kafir, the enemies of Allah and his messenger. You are by default deemed to be enemies of Allah and his messenger. For whoever has heard the summons of the messenger of Allah and has not responded to it must be fought until there is no more fitna and the religion is entirely for Allah. That's from the Quran. Thoughts, comments?
We do have a question from Constance. He's asking if there is no caliph in place, who is on a practical level initiating the fight? Obviously,
okay, so,
we've looked at the responsibility of each individual, but who is instigating it, so to speak?
Okay, so I didn't go. So the previous book I was reading, the Hidayah, I only did a few pages. That book has about, I don't know, 100, I don't know, it's got at least 70 pages, if not like 150 pages on jihad warfare against non-Muslims, right? If we'd read further, if we go into that, it simply says that non-Muslims, like Christians, should be frightened. We have to be terrified of the Muslims. We should, in fact, be terrified of individual Muslims. We should cower in fear, and we should be terrified of their punishment. So we should then, so that responsibility falls upon the individual Muslim. He should take it upon himself if there is no caliph. Now they'll say, well, look, I mean, it's only if it's defensive. Well, it is defensive because we have sinned against Allah and they're defending Allah's religion. It's that simple. Does that answer the question? I've lost audio again.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a good answer. If he has a follow-up question, he's welcome to ask it. We have a comment here that ISIS practices Ibn Taymiyyah, but Ibn Taymiyyah practices Muhammad and Islam, and it's very true.
Yeah, no, exactly. So when Allah sent his prophet and ordered him to summon the people to his religion, he did not permit him to kill or fight anyone for that reason before immigrating to Medina. Thereafter, he gave him and the Muslims permission with the words, permission is given to those who are fought because they were wronged. Okay, so I mean, they weren't wronged, whatever, but they need to forbid evil. They need to enjoin the good. Remember I said in the last episode on Tuesday about what's the word I had, something, forbid evil, but promote the good and forbid the evil. Well, this is what they're talking about. So he imposed fighting to them with the following words. So Allah imposed fighting on the Muslims with the following words. Fighting is prescribed for you, though it be hateful to you. Yet it may happen that you will hate a thing that is better for you, and it may happen that you love a thing that is worse for you. Allah knows and you know not. So if we look at what the word prescribed means, right? So fasting is prescribed for you. If you look at, for instance, legally speaking, fasting is prescribed for you as it is prescribed for those before you. So we know that fasting is obligatory. So prescribed in the context of Islam and in the legal context means it is obligatory. So fighting is obligatory. It's exactly the same meaning as for the fast. Let's have a look. The scriptural basis for jihad prior to scholarly consensus is fighting is prescribed for you, Quran 2, 216, and I've read those out earlier. So this confirms the Sharia. He's in alignment, exact alignment with the Sharia. And they're speaking here of Surah 39, so Surah Al-Hajj, I don't know what book that is. Oh, 39:41, and Surah Al-Baqarah 2:16. The cow, I think that means, but now he has emphasized this command and glorified jihad in many of the Medinan chapters. He has criticized those who fail to participate in it. We just learned earlier that those who sit behind at home are not equal to those who die and are killed, well, are hurt and are killed in jihad. He has called them hypocrites and sick in their hearts. So a Muslim who does not hate you and want to kill you is sick in his heart.
I would say it's the opposite. That they are sick because they want to kill us, but you know, everything is upside down in Islam.
Yeah. So if your fathers and your sons and your brothers and your wives and your clan and your wealth that you have gained and the commerce that you fear may decline and the dwellings that you love are dearer to you than Allah and his messenger and jihad, then wait till Allah brings his punishment, because Allah guides not the rebellious. So Ibn Taymiyyah is telling us that jihad must be dearer to you than everything in your life. And if you don't do jihad, Allah will bring punishment because he doesn't guide the rebellious. You are rebellious if you are not out there fighting the unbelievers. Only those are the believers who have believed in Allah and have made jihad with their possessions and their selves in the way of Allah. They are the truthful. So you are only a believer, and this is according to the Quran, right? Surah Tawbah, verse 24, and Surah Al-Hujarat, verse 15. So this is the meaning. He's not telling us exactly the meaning. He's doing an exegesis of the Quran, and he's telling us you're only a believer, you're only a Muslim if you make jihad with your wealth and with your life. So yeah, any comments or thoughts so far? Because I should make it to the end of this. Any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, just reiterate that this is just so opposite of true morality here. That Islam is telling us that you're only a good person if you're fighting and killing people in the name of Islam.
Yeah, if you're violent. I mean, this is incredible. And no wonder Syed left, because he knew what we were going to read. He probably knows this stuff. You know, in his twisted little brain, he probably knows this. A clear surah is sent down, and therein fighting is mentioned. You see those in whose heart is sickness looking at you as one who faints of death. But it would be better for them if they were obedient and they spoke honorable words, right? When the matter is resolved, if they were true to Allah, it would be better for them. So the people who are cowardly, who are afraid of fighting, who look at you, basically you see them in whose heart is sickness, looking at you as if they're going to faint. But it is better for them to be obedient to the words of Allah. And so there are numerous similar verses in the Quran, and equally frequent is the glorification of jihad and those who participate in it. For instance, in the ranks, "O you who believe, shall I direct you to a commerce?" Now notice, everything in Islam is a legal transaction. For instance, marriage, the nikah in Islam, is not a matter of love. It's not a matter of wanting to be with someone. In Islam, basically the marriage ceremony, what that means is it simply means legal sexual relations. It just means it's legal for you to have sex. It doesn't mean you love someone, because in the, maybe you can explain this a bit better than me, but in Christianity, marriage is a sacrament. I don't exactly know what a sacrament is. I can't describe it. But in Islam, it's merely a contractual obligation that says, okay, you can now have sex and we won't kill you. Because if you did it without having a contract, you would die. But if you don't, if you do, well, it's okay. You can have sex and we won't kill you. So what's the difference between a sacrament and just this ugly legal document that they do?
Yeah, so a sacrament is something sacred, ordained by God, that it is a very serious matter for humans to partake in because they're taking part in the divine in a sense.
Okay, so everything in Islam is an agreement, it's a legal agreement. And in this case, it's a transaction, a commerce. Remember when I said, when you become a Muslim and you say, there's no God but Muhammad and Allah is his puppet, what happens is, am I being out of line by saying that, do you think?
No, I think it's pretty accurate. It's more accurate than the traditional Shahada.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we can't find the original Shahada in the Quran, right? So anywho, so
maybe that is the original, and what we have now is the corrupted version.
Exactly, the Quran was corrupted. So the bay'ah, as I said, is a transaction. Now, the bay'ah, when you say the Shahada, that's the bay'ah. You make a commercial that's a contract. You literally are signing a contract. However, if you look for where the bay'ah comes from, it comes from the, if you look at the legal documents to see where it's defined under selling. Okay, the bay'ah comes from selling, from trade. So specifically in selling. And what are you selling when you commit yourself to Allah? Think about that for a moment. You're selling your soul. So this is the commerce. You are selling your soul. I'm directing you to a commerce. This is a sale. You're making a sale. That's what you do when you say the Shahada. You're making a sale. You are selling your soul to the devil, basically. And this commerce, this trade that shall deliver you from a painful torment, because in Islam, there's the torment of the grave. Dying is hell. Literally, for them, dying is hell. It is an incredible punishment. And it's something they fear incredibly, right? Because when Muslims die, they're supposed to fight each other and beat each other and hurt each other as punishment for their sins before they manage to find maybe salvation. But if you want to save yourself from the torment of the grave, believe in Allah and his messenger, and then make jihad in the way of Allah with your wealth and your lives. And then he will forgive your sins. And that is the supreme success. That's the context of what this verse means.
Yeah, so you win forgiveness, quote unquote forgiveness, by selling your soul to Allah and by waging war on his behalf.
Yes, precisely that. I mean, the bay'ah, I should read up on the bay'ah, B-A-Y-A-H. It might be an apostrophe after the Y. Check that out, and you'll see it falls under contracts of sale. So help from Allah and the victory is near, right? So do you reckon the giving of water to pilgrims and taking care of the holy mosques as the same as one who makes jihad in the way of Allah? They are not equal in Allah's sight. Now remember, they always tell you, if you look at, I think it's the Gospel of Matthew, where Jesus says, Christianity is to look after the orphans and the wives and so on, I think, and the widows. Now remember, Muslims always say that, well, look, Muhammad said that we need to look after the orphans and the widows, because that's just plagiarized from the Gospels. But notice it says here, it says, do you think the giving of water to pilgrims and taking care of the holy mosque is the same? Basically, they're saying, no, that's not important. Jihad in the way of Allah is important. Those who immigrated, what's happening in Europe? I live in Europe. So what's happening in Europe with all these Islamic migrants? Well, yeah, they're immigrating. That's jihad. And they've made jihad in the way of Allah with their wealth. Well, they spent thousands of dollars to cross the Mediterranean, That's what they're doing. And their lives, and they are mightier in rank with Allah. They are the triumphant. For them await gardens, wherein is lasting bliss. That's prostitute Islamic heaven. Surely with Allah is a great reward. Prostitute heaven. Yeah. So you who believe, right? Allah will surely, blah, blah. Okay. So you are stern towards the unbelievers, fighting in the path of Allah, not fearing the blame of any blamer. You know, don't care what other people think. Just go and kill the non-Muslims. And also, right, those who fight in the way of Allah are neither smitten by thirst nor fatigue nor emptiness, right? And Allah leaves not to waste the wage of the good doers. So the people who fight in jihad to murder non-Muslims are good doers, and Allah will recompense them the best of what they were doing. Thus, he has mentioned the reward resulting from their deeds that they must practice. And the command to participate in jihad and the mention of its merits occur innumerable times in the Quran and the Sunnah. It is the best voluntary religious, notice, it says that deciding to kill people in jihad is a voluntary religious act that the man can perform. And all scholars agree that jihad is better than the Hajj. So the head of the affair is Islam. Its central pillar is the prayer, and the summit is jihad. So all these, so they speak of in paradise there are 100 grades with intervals as wide, blah. All of these Allah has prepared for those who take part in jihad. He whose feet have become dust in the way of Allah, Allah will save from the hellfire. So we have redemption through Christ in Christianity. In Islam, there is no redemption. Muhammad did not bring redemption. He says, I'm nothing but a warner. I don't even know. He says, he's not even sure if he will be saved from the hellfire. He doesn't know. So the only guarantee of redemption, the only guarantee of salvation from the torture, the torment of the grave before you even go to hell is jihad. So let's see. A man said to Muhammad, tell me of an act that equals jihad in the way of Allah. He answered, you will not be capable of doing an act that is equal to jihad. The messenger of Allah said, the man said, tell me anyway. So Muhammad said, can you, when a jihad warrior has gone out on expedition, fast without interruption and spend the night in continuous prayer? The man said, no. Then the messenger of Allah said, this is what equals jihad. So there is no human act that is equal to jihad. Thoughts or comments? Because I'm sort of the last 10-15% of the book, I guess.
Yeah, I just go ahead and continue.
Yep. So hopefully I'm covering this. So hopefully this information is useful to you guys. You can use this and you can quote this. I can give you access to the book. I'll put the links. In the last show, in the comments, I placed the links to everything that I was quoting from. So in the Sunnah, we find that Muhammad said, every nation has its tourism, and the tourism of my nation is jihad in the path of Allah. Well, that's great. The benefit of jihad extends not only to the person who participates in it, but also to others, both in a religious sense, right? Jihad implies all kinds of worship. So it is a religious act. And notice the man who dies in jihad can intercede with Allah for 70 of his family members. So in other words, Muslims live in terror. They live in terror of dying because they think they're going to be tortured and suffer in the grave. So if one of your sons dies in jihad, if he fights and he dies, he kills himself, whatever the case might be, 70 of his family members may be saved from this. That is why your Fakistinians love their jihadis, because they will be saved from the hellfire this way. So more than any act, jihad implies love and devotion for Allah and the surrender of one's life and property to him, right? So individual or community that participates in it finds itself between two blissful outcomes, victory and triumph, or martyrdom and paradise. And then just all creatures must live and die. Now it is in jihad that one can live and die in the ultimate happiness. Yeah, so jihad is religiously more beneficial than any other deed. So yeah, it just goes on. I mean, I read this stuff and it's just, the death of a martyr is easier than any other form of death. In fact, it's the best of all manners of dying. since lawful warfare is essentially jihad, and since its aim is that the religion is entirely for Allah and the word of Allah is uppermost, therefore, according to all Muslims, those who stand in the way of this aim must be fought. I wonder what Didat's going to tell me here. I really have to wonder, what is this paragraph, what is he going to say, right? So they mention here, Allah caused his peace of reassurance to descend upon him and supported him with hosts, right, that you cannot see. Because they simply say, well, you know, Allah will guide you and support you. The angels will come and help you. You'll get magical assistance and all that. Observe your duty to Allah that you may be successful. These are the quotes that they've got in here. These are the Quran verses they're quoting there. And fight them until there's no fitna and until the religion, all of it is for Allah. That's 389 or 839 here. So jihad is lawful warfare. So it is offensive warfare to establish Islam against non-Muslims. Peaceful non-Muslims must be fought, and so that the word of Allah is uppermost and that religion is entirely for Allah. And according to all Muslims, those who stand in the way of the same. And when he says all Muslims, obviously all Muslims have to obey the scholars, but he's talking about the scholars here. And therefore, we stand in the way, we must be fought. And as for those who cannot offer resistance or cannot fight, unless they actually fight with words and acts by spying or otherwise assistance, some jurists are of the opinion that all of them may be killed on the mere ground that they are unbelievers. Don't kill the women and children unless maybe we should all just kill them anyway. Or if they fight us with words, you know, if they disagree with us, we can kill them for that reason. And they make an exception for women and children since they constitute property for Muslims. So if there's a benefit for them to make a slave out of a woman and a child, then it's okay not to kill them. Praise be to Allah.
Before you go on, I think that's a point worth emphasizing here, that it has nothing to do with having mercy on women and children. It's because they can be used as property that they are the exempted.
Yeah, the slaves or the sex slaves, or this can be sold for money. So, however, the first opinion, okay, we may only fight those who fight us when we want to make the religion of Allah victorious. Now notice they say we only fight in self-defense. Because now notice the trickery, the deceit here. This is disgusting. We may only fight those who fight us when we want to force Islam upon them. So if they come to you and they want to force Islam upon you and you resist, then they are fighting in self-defense.
Insanity.
Yeah, and this is how they lie. So they are lied to by their imams, but they also lie to themselves and they lie to us. So it's all lies. I mean, this is all. It's twisted. It is disgusting, satanic filth. So, yeah. So fitna is more grievous than slaying. Now, fitna is simply trying to lure someone away from Islam by saying, for instance, if you're a missionary and you say, you know, you're an evangelist, say, look, leave Islam, come to Christianity. That is fitna. And fitna is more grievous. It's temptation. Fitna translates as temptation, and it is more grievous than slaying. Although there is evil and abomination in killing, there is greater evil in the persecution of the unbelievers. They don't mean in persecuting unbelievers, in us wanting to do outreach to them, evangelization, and bring them to Christianity. That is persecution from us. And that is worse than them killing us for that reason. So the Sharia legally enjoins fighting the unbelievers. And if a male is taken captive as a result of a shipwreck, because he lost his way, or as a result of a trick or a ruse, in other words, deception, then the imam may do whatever he deems appropriate, killing him, enslaving him, releasing him, or setting him free for a ransom, consisting of property or people. This is the view of most jurists, and it is supported by the Quran and the Sunnah. So as for the people of the book, they are to be fought until they become Muslims or they pay the jizya out of hand and have been humbled. I mean, it's kind of going on like this. It's just, this is the preeminent jihad scholar in Islam. This is, as far as I know, the preeminent jihad scholar in Islam. Where does he deviate from the Sharia? You know.
Yep. I mean, we're quoting the best of the best here. So if you're going to try to dispute our points, at least bring some sort of source. I mean, all we ever get in reply is people stating their own personal opinion, which we don't even know if they really believe that. They might just be saying that because they think it's what.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've
their
already
cause.
proven that they cannot They may not. They're not allowed to quote their own sources.
Yeah, I mean that's probably why they never do. I mean, if someone demanded I bring a source to prove my beliefs, I would be happy to do that. I would be thrilled to bring a source.
No. I mean, this just goes on. It's the most disgusting, vile, evil belief system on the face of the planet. You know, all Muslims agree that jihad must be waged against them in order that the religion will be for Allah in totality. So if a rebellious group belonging to Islam refuses to comply, in other words, this is now what they do with non-Muslims, with Muslims as well. And the Messenger of Allah said, I've been ordered to fight people until they profess there is no Allah, that there is no Allah. Yeah, I agree with that. That's a typo. And that Muhammad is Allah's messenger. They say that, and there's a rule. Okay. Now notice if they say the Shahada, their lives and properties will be inviolable. In other words, there's no way inviolate, right? Inviolate, unless there's a rule of law that Allah's taking their lives. So if you say the Shahada, you are totally safe unless there's a reason for us to kill you. I mean, praise be to Allah, right? What the, seriously, man, what the? And
religion of peace.
You know, yeah, I once gave peace. It was at a hospital, and they had to do some testing, and I had to do it in a small jar. You know. So so I realized immediately that Allah had opened his heart for fighting, and I knew that was right. That's Umar, the companion of Muhammad. What's interesting is that Jesus had 12 apostles, and guess how many apostles Muhammad had?
I'm gonna go with 12.
By sheer coincidence. So there are those Muslims who will abandon the religion, and whenever you find them, you must kill them, since those who kill them will be rewarded on the day of resurrection. Isn't that sweet? Right? So yeah, it just goes on. We're nearly done with this. I'm nearly done, another couple of minutes. So in another version of this tradition, they will fight the people of faith and I shall kill them. I mean, it just goes on. I don't see where the peace is. In another tradition, my community will fall apart into two parties, and the party that is closest to the truth will be in charge of killing the other one. We're closer to the truth. We're going to kill you. No, we're closer to the truth. We're going to murder you guys. No, it's us. No, we're going to kill. No, yeah, religion of peace. Like I said, it's the medical piece that I once had to do at a hospital into a small jar. I was wearing a little thingy that, anyway, so it has been established on the authority of the Quran, the Sunnah, and the consensus, the ijma of the community, of the Ummah of Islam, that those who depart from the law of Islam, and that includes you as a non-Muslim, must be fought, even if they pronounce the two professions of faith, right? So yeah, I mean, they are talking about those who leave the religion, but I think they've made it clear. It is allowed to fight people for not observing unambiguous and generally recognized obligations and prohibitions. That's why these Sunnis fight the Shias, and that's why they all fight the apostates, and they all fight the hypocrites, and they all fight each other, because Islam is done like this. No, it's done like this. You're wrong. We have to kill you now. It is obligatory to take the initiative in fighting those people, to take the initiative in fighting them, as soon as the Prophet summons with the reasons for which they are fought has reached them. So when they say, to you be your religion, come to Islam, Islam is the truth, and you say, no, I don't think it's crap. And they go, well, to you be your religion, to me be my religion. That is a threat, because they've now terminated discussion. They've terminated discussion with you, and now they must take the initiative in fighting you, right? So in other words, the reasons for which they're fought has reached them. The reasons have reached us. We have been reached as far as they're concerned. So the most serious type of obligatory jihad is the one against the unbelievers. Read that again. The most serious type of obligatory jihad is the one against the unbelievers and against those who refuse to abide by the Sharia. So you are the unbeliever, and it's the most serious type of obligatory. It is obligatory for them to fight us. This jihad is obligatory if it is carried out on our initiative, not self-defense, not defensive, our initiative. If we take the initiative, it is a collective duty, which means that if it is fulfilled by a sufficient number of Muslims, the obligation lapses for all others, and the merit goes to those who have fulfilled it. Now we have a third confirmation from another source of the Sharia for the very same claim. And we're very near the end, 1 or 2 pages left. Let me see, yeah, 2 pages. Those believers who sit at home unless they have an injury are not equals of the mujahideen in the path of Allah with their wealth and their lives. Allah has preferred in rank the mujahideen with their wealth and their lives over the ones who sit at home. Right? Thank heaven Said sits at home. I appreciate it. Allah has preferred the mujahideen over the ones who sit at home. Right? So the mujahideen, that just confirms everything we've read so far. And the Prophet has ordered Muslims to help fellow Muslims. The assistance, which is obligatory both for the regular professional army and for others, must be given according to everybody's possibilities, either in person by fighting on foot or on horseback, or through financial contributions, be they small or large. So that's where your zakat money is going, to warfare. And it's not necessarily, they will be, someone mentioned the Muslim Brotherhood earlier. I have done a number of, I've written documents for certain organizations on the Muslim Brotherhood. And I've done analysis of Muslim Brotherhood methods, especially their ideological warfare methods. And maybe that's something I can discuss in the future. I've actually done a lot of analysis and research of the Muslim Brotherhood, what they do, what they are, what they believe. And it's exactly the same as this. There is no difference. So the later form of jihad consists in defense of the religion, blah, 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 okay? Therefore, it is fighting out of necessity. But the former type of jihad is voluntary fighting in order to propagate the religion, to make it triumph and to intimidate the enemy. This form of punishment, jihad, must be administered to rebellious people. Guess who the rebellious people are?
Everyone who's not a Muslim.
Everyone is not a Muslim, and that's it. This is the end of this. I didn't read the whole of the Sharia. That Sharia manual that I missed. I only did a small portion of it. I probably missed 80% of it. It is incredibly detailed. It says some crazy things, but this is a scholarly work that I thought people should know about, and that's the end of that one.
And we got a lot of comments in the chat, basically people saying this is satanic, this is evil, this is disgusting, this is sick. Agree completely.
Yeah.
That, I mean, Islam is, now, just to be clear, when I say Islam, I don't necessarily mean individual Muslims, but Islam, the religion and what it teaches is pure evil.
It is. Look, I believe it is the Antichrist religion. I honestly believe, I mean, I've read what Muhammad Jesus, I mean, he's Muhammad Jesus. Right. And this is the Antichrist religion.
And I think it's important to point out that there's a lot of practical implications of, the sources saying that jihad's the best thing you can do, and this is the only way you can guarantee heaven and whatnot. So no doubt in Muslim society, there's a lot of rebellious teenagers, just like in every society, or, people who experiment with things that they know are considered immoral. And then what do you do to make up for that? I mean, you can easily put yourself in a situation where you have this huge stack of quote unquote debt to Allah, and you're basically forced into a jihad situation because that's the only thing that can make up for your past sins. Yeah. Likewise, this is one of the reasons why Islam is so popular in the prison system, because, you go to people who have a violent past and you're like, hey, you can get forgiveness for your violent past by being violent some more.
True.
Yeah, of course, that sounds appealing to a certain segment of people who are inclined to do violence.
Yeah, I mean, it's just horrific. I mean, my cable is stuck somewhere. I mean, it's horrific. I read these books. I mean, Ibn Taymiyyah has written some books. He's got a couple. I mean, I've read thousands of pages of this stuff, and it's insane. It's insane. It just goes on like this. It's crazy. It doesn't stop. And if you read their polemics against Christianity, I can't believe it. Seriously, it's hard for me to comprehend the depravity and the blatant stupidity that you find here. It's just like, how can anyone believe this?
Yeah, that's one question that I really struggle to answer. I can understand people being ignorant. I can understand people pretending to believe it out of fear, but there has to be people at the top who really believe this stuff. And it just blows my mind that anyone could know these things that we're looking at and still look at Islam and say, yep, it's the true religion. Yep, this is what I want to do with my life. This is the God I want to follow.
Yeah. Well, look, they desperately don't want us, as we saw. They don't want us knowing this stuff. They don't want us discussing it. So for this reason, it is critical that we discuss this, that we get it out there. We put it on Facebook. We discuss it on YouTube. We just get it out there on social media. We talk about it. My collection, when I started with you couple of months ago, I had a collection of about 500 and something books. My collection is now going on 800. And I'm collecting some of the best scholarly works. I mean, I'm not collecting garbage. I'm finding that I'm slowly reading through a lot of it. You'd be amazed how much of this stuff I read. How many hours a day sometimes I spend on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point that, we're not just cherry picking. We're not doing a Google search and coming across the first thing we find and saying, oh, who cares if that's a good source or not? I'll just quote it because it sounds bad. The way Muslims do with the Bible or Christian sources. We're going to the sources that have been the most respected, most revered in Islamic history, the ones that have traditionally been taught in Islamic schools. These are the best scholars. These are the ones that are thought to have known Islam the best. And all you can offer in return is your personal opinion. I mean, come on. Have the respect to put in some effort to it. We're putting in a ton of effort here. We're doing our best to find the best sources. If you have better sources, let us know what they are. But I don't think you do. I think that you either know that we're correct and just don't want anyone else to know it, so you pretend we're lying, or you're lying to yourself and you want to believe it's true.
Or they support it, or they willingly, knowingly support. They want to do violence against us. They believe that we are evil, that we are worshiping Satan, that we are defying Allah, and that we deserve to be punished for it. They might also just actually believe that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the kind of people who spend all of their time on YouTube comments are definitely much more likely to be in that category.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if Dida is going to stop lying to us and just say, okay, fine, you guys have read it. I admit it. That's it. And
yeah, like he did in his last post there, and just be like, I'm not embarrassed. This is what we believe. You got a problem with it? Too bad.
Yeah, but he won't tell us what he believes. He won't quote it for us from his scholars. What does he believe? His own mind, his own thoughts, his own opinions? Or does he believe something that's written in a book somewhere like this? So show us the book, show us what you believe, show us the scriptures, the Sharia, the fiqh, whatever, the scholars, but can't. So yeah, but this is jihad. So I would challenge any Muslim, including the brain dead Syed who disappeared because he knew he was going to get humiliated, and people like Didat, and of course Amin has been sending me messages on Facebook of all things. He wants to talk to me. Like seriously.
Yeah, after he cursed you out on YouTube, and
I want them to actually show me an authoritative source. And I don't mean one verse or one sentence or one little hadith somewhere, some random abrogated hadith. No, bring me a scholarly work that is respected, that we all can go look at. Like I have. Bring me a Sharia manual. Bring me your best works of fiqh. Bring me your best scholarship. Not some obscure guy that died 500 years ago that no one's ever heard of. They will try that. They do that.
yeah, I mean, so some of them are more sophisticated than others. The Muhammad Amins of the world are definitely more sophisticated in that they know how to find obscure sources to quote to us. He's pretty much one of very few people who's ever bothered to quote anything, and of course he quotes random mystical texts and random people who call themselves Muslims but have no authority in Islam, and quotes as random biblical scholars from the or not scholars, but people giving their opinion on the Bible in the 1800s, just like random lay people who wrote a book. And he's like, here's what early Christian scholars said. This is what Christianity is all about. It's like, no, that's one random person's opinion.
You know what's amazing? When they start to quote, look at this author, George Bernard Shaw had this to say about Islam. You're like, no, quote me Ibn Taymiyyah. Give me his whole book, in fact. You know, don't give me this one quote. Who's George Bernard Shaw in the world of Islam? Nobody. You know, don't quote me some random musician. Like, huh? Sinead O'Connor said, she's insane. Give me your scholars. Yeah.
For real, for real, when they pull stuff like that, I'm like, is Shah a prophet of Islam? Is he the new authoritative source? Or are you only quoting him because he said something that you vaguely agree with and you don't have anything else to quote, so you just get a random people?
Yeah, I mean, they're stupid. It's stupid. And but look, they can't. I mean, how do we get them to actually discuss this in good faith? I mean, I could end up talking with one of their senior imams, but when I have had a chance, on the very rare occasions that I've spoken with a very, very senior scholar, all they say is, yeah, you're right. Now what you going to do? That's all they do. They realize I know too much, right? Because they try to bamboozle me, and I'm like, look, dude, I'm not that guy. No, I'm not that guy. You tell that to someone else, and they'll just say, yeah, you got me.
No, I mean, what else can they do?
So guys, I hope you will be able to use this information, talk about it, make it known, use it. You know, you have to put it out there that they're lying to you on a constant basis. Yeah, and we have to. I mean, you want to save your civilization, want to save your planet, your country, your home. This is critical. They are serious. They believe this.
Very true. Very true. We're in a real fight here. This isn't some game, you know. It's easy to go to the YouTube comments and laugh at an idiot. And, you know, we all do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Having a little fun with Muslim who has no clue what they're talking about and has no interest in the truth. But at the same time, there's a very serious aspect to this. There are a percentage, I don't want to speculate what percentage it is, but there's certainly a percentage of Muslims who 100% believe everything we're talking about, that they're just waiting for their opportunity to launch jihad, by which I mean killing people.
Yeah. No, they're serious about it. I mean, they're very serious. So yeah. So any last questions for you guys? I mean, anything that you guys want to know? Any questions you have I can help you with?
I'm not seeing anything. We'll give them a second, but also,
you know, also there's this guy. I mean, there's this guy Isaiah 42 on Islam Critique channel, and this guy is foul-mouthed. I mean, really foul-mouthed. You know, so anytime I quote the Sharia, he comes back and he is swearing. It's the you know, the FUs and the B. I mean, he's really going for it. And then I want to bring. I mean, I don't know Colin personally, but I think someone should bring it to his attention, because this guy is really. Every time I quote the Sharia, this guy loses. Let's just say he loses his cool. Right? He really doesn't like me quoting this stuff. So they're getting angry because we're over the target here. But someone needs to. I mean, this guy needs to be banned, because look, it's one thing to have a conversation. It's another thing to start swearing on a routine, several swear words in a sentence.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to end it on. That, you know, it's really easy to get angry when you read about this stuff, and certainly there is reason to be angry that this is pure evil. But at the same time, we don't really want to take it out on, you know, random individuals. We want to maintain our cool, show Christ through our actions. By all means, expose their evil, expose their bad arguments, but don't lose your cool. Don't mouth off against someone. That doesn't do any good. So thank you all for joining us today. We'll definitely be continuing this series, so let us know what you would like us to cover in the comment section. Have a good afternoon, evening, morning, whatever time of day it is where you are. God bless everyone.